Folks, have you ever wondered how a young man's morning grumpiness could spark a legendary career in country music? That's the tale of Louis Marshall Jones, the man who became Grandpa Jones, transforming a simple nickname into a persona that resonated through 7 decades of banjo strums, yodels, and down-home tales. His story isn't just about fame. It's about a life steeped in the rhythms of rural America, where music wasn't a luxury, but a lifeline. If you've ever hummed an old folk tune or smiled at a slice of country wit, you've brushed against his enduring charm. Settle in, and let's explore the journey of this extraordinary figure who turned everyday quirks into timeless art. In the early 20th century, the back roads of Kentucky pulsed with the quiet determination of farm families eking out a living from the soil. Tobacco fields stretched like green oceans under the sun, and communities like Niagara and Henderson County were bound by shared hardships and simple pleasures. It was here, on October 20th, 1913, that Louis Marshall Jones entered the world as the youngest of 10 children, 8 boys and 2 girls, in a sharecropping household. His parents, Marshall and Lula Jones, toiled endlessly, planting, tending, and harvesting crops that barely sustained them. The family home was modest, a place where the day's labors ended with the setting sun, but it was alive with sounds that offered respite from the grind. Louis's father, an old-time fiddle player, would draw his bow across the strings in the evenings, filling the air with lively reels that echoed the spirited dances of Appalachian heritage. His mother, a gifted ballad singer, accompanied herself on the concertina, her voice weaving tales of heartbreak and hope that had been passed down through generations. From his earliest days, Louis absorbed these melodies like the earth soaks up rain. They became the foundation of his soul. He started tinkering with music around age 11, strumming a guitar and performing in public for small crowds, his young voice carrying the weight of songs far older than himself. But the Great Depression loomed, casting shadows over rural life with threats of eviction and hunger. Like many families seeking stability, the Joneses uprooted when Louis was in his teens, migrating north to Akron, Ohio. This industrial hub, with its roaring factories producing tires and steel, was a stark contrast to Kentucky's fields. Smokestacks belched clouds into the sky, and the streets teemed with workers chasing the promise of steady pay. Amid this urban clamor, Louis found solace in the radio, where stations broadcasted crackling country tunes from shows like the WLS Barn Dance in Chicago. These programs, featuring artists who sang of lonesome trails and heartfelt yearnings, ignited a passion in him that no factory job could quench. It was in Akron that his father's shift from farmer to factory worker underscored the era's migrations. A common story of families trading plows for punch clocks in pursuit of survival. Louis's entry into the music world unfolded gradually, building momentum like a gentle stream turning into a rushing river. Influenced deeply by Jimmy Rogers, the singing brakeman whose yodeling records his sister brought home, Louis mimicked those wandering cowboy anthems that painted vivid scenes of trains chugging through vast landscapes and hearts aching for home. By age 18, in 1931, he had won a local talent contest, earning him a slot on WJW radio in Akron. There, he styled himself as the young singer of old songs, delivering vintage ballads with a sincerity that belied his youth. His voice, rich with the inflections of Kentucky hills, drew in listeners who, amidst the economic turmoil of the Depression, craved the comfort of simpler times. Soon he expanded his reach by joining the Pine Ridge String Band, providing lively accompaniment for the wildly popular Lum and Abner radio comedy, a show that captured the essence of small-town Arkansas life with its folksy humor and relatable characters. Audiences across the Midwest tuned in religiously, their laughter and applause feeding Lewis's growing confidence. But the pivotal moment arrived in 1935 when he landed at WBZ in Boston, working alongside Bradley Kincaid, a respected country star known for his authentic folk renditions. Kincaid, observing Lewis's habitual complaints about the early morning broadcasts, his grouchy demeanor and muttered gripes, dubbed him Grandpa. At just 22, Louis could have shrugged it off, but instead he embraced it wholeheartedly. With Kincaid's help, he crafted a stage persona, a fake mustache, oversized boots, baggy pants, and a crotchety attitude drawn from vaudeville traditions. This wasn't mere theatrics. It mirrored Lewis's own playful irascibility, a trait that endeared him to fans. As he later reflected in his 1984 autobiography, Everybody's Grandpa. 50 years. Behind the Mic, co-written with Charles Wolfe, the nickname felt like destiny. It just fit, he wrote, capturing how this alter ego allowed him to channel the wisdom of elders while infusing his performances with youthful energy. Little known to many, this transformation occurred during a time when radio was king, and personalities like Grandpa Jones helped bridge the gap between rural traditions and urban audiences hungry for nostalgia. As the late 1930s unfolded, Grandpa Jones refined his artistry, traversing radio stations in West Virginia and Cincinnati with the determination of a traveling minstrel. These years were formative, marked by encounters that shaped his unique sound. In 1937, while performing in those regions, he crossed paths with Cousin Emmy, a dynamic entertainer whose fiery spirit and multi-instrumental talents were legendary in folk circles. Emmy, born Joy Cynthia Everett, taught him the claw-hammer banjo technique, a primal rhythmic method where the hand strikes the strings downward like a hammer, producing a raw, pulsating beat reminiscent of backwoods gatherings under starry skies. Unlike the more refined three-finger picking emerging in bluegrass, clawhammer was gritty and unpolished, evoking the authenticity of moonlit porches where families jammed for hours. Grandpa integrated it seamlessly into his repertoire, adding a layer of earthy grit that distinguished him from contemporaries. By 1942, he had anchored himself at WLW in Cincinnati, a powerhouse station that broadcasted across the nation. There, he collaborated with Merle Travis, the Delmore Brothers, Alton and Rabin, and others to form Brown's Ferry 4, one of the earliest and most influential gospel quartets in country music. Their tight harmonies, blending sacred hymns with rhythmic drive, echoed the spiritual traditions of the South, offering solace during uncertain times. Songs like I'll Meet You in the Morning and The Arm of God showcased their vocal interplay, with Grandpa's banjo providing a buoyant undercurrent. Then, in the fall of 1943 came a breakthrough in recordings. Grandpa and Travis laid down tracks for the newly founded King Records under the pseudonym the Shepherd Brothers. This marked King's inaugural release, a milestone for the Cincinnati-based label that would become synonymous with raw country and R&B. Their debut included tunes that captured everyday life, but it was in 1944 that Grandpa scored his first solo hit with It's Raining Here This Morning, a whimsical lament about foul weather mirroring rural woes, delivered with a humorous twist that became his signature. The song's lyrics, painting pictures of leaky roofs and soggy fields, resonated with listeners facing their own storms, both literal and metaphorical. Yet global turmoil interrupted this ascent. World War II demanded service, and in 1941, at age 28, Grandpa enlisted in the U.S. Army, serving until 1945. Stationed primarily in Germany with the Special Services, He refused to let the horrors of war silence his music. He organized the Munich Mountaineers, a ragtag band of soldiers who performed country sets in makeshift venues, tents, barracks, and open fields to uplift morale. Picture him there, banjo in hand amidst the rubble of Europe, strumming tunes that transported weary GIs back to American soil, evoking images of homemade apple pie, front porch swings, and the comforting glow of family hearths. A little-known anecdote from his autobiography reveals how these performances weren't just entertainment, they were therapy. "Those boys needed a reminder of home," he wrote, "and if my banjo could give them that, even for a few minutes, it was worth every blister." Discharged in 1946, he returned with renewed vigor, resuming recordings for King Records. That year brought hits like 8 More Miles to Louisville, a jaunty travelogue celebrating Kentucky's charm with lyrics about rolling hills and welcoming arms, and Mountain Dew, a rollicking ode to homemade moonshine that captured the rebellious spirit of hill country life. Amid these professional triumphs came personal fulfillment. On October 14, 1946, he married Ramona Riggins, a skilled fiddler and mandolin player he'd met at WLW. Ramona, who had begun mastering the mandolin at 6 or 7 years old, was no mere accompanist. She was his equal, sharing stages in life for over 5 decades. Their union was a partnership of hearts and harmonies. And soon after, they relocated to Nashville, where Grandpa secured a spot on the Grand Ole Opry. His debut there cemented his status with his vigorous banjo playing and impeccable timing, turning him into a beloved regular for more than 50 years. A rarely discussed detail is that Grandpa had been briefly married before to Eulalia Burton in 1938, a union that ended in divorce. This early chapter, overshadowed by his long-lasting bond with Ramona, highlights the personal trials he navigated before finding enduring love. The 1950s whirlwind of activity saw Grandpa and Ramona crisscrossing the country, their music a beacon during post-war recovery. They toured extensively, even venturing overseas to entertain U.S. troops in Korea, where the harsh conditions of the conflict zone mirrored the soldiers' longing for home. Grandpa's sets, filled with upbeat numbers and gospel favorites, provided a momentary escape, much like his World War II efforts. Back home, they recorded for major labels like RCA Victor and Decca, producing tracks that blended traditional country with subtle innovations. They lived transiently in places like Arlington and Richmond, Virginia, and Washington, D.C., before planting roots permanently at the Opry in 1959. By then, family life blossomed. They welcomed 3 children, a son, Mark, and daughters, including Elisa Jones Wall, who would later inherit the family's musical legacy by becoming a renowned hammered dulcimer player. Grandpa often spoke of the joy in watching his kids absorb the tunes, much as he had in his youth. Entering the 1960s, he signed with Monument Records under producer Fred Foster, who encouraged artistic freedom. Grandpa regarded these sessions as his pinnacle, yielding albums that distilled his essence, raw emotion wrapped in humor. His 1963 cover of Jimmie Rogers' T for Texas, also known as Blue Yodel No. 1, climbed to number 5 on the country charts, its yodeling verses evoking the lonesome blues of rail-riding wanderers. Then came 1969's The Christmas Guest, a poignant spoken-word narrative based on a poem by Helen Steiner Rice, recounting a stranger's visit that teaches compassion and faith. Its emotional depth, delivered in Grandpa's gravelly voice, became a holiday staple, tugging at listeners' heartstrings with its message of kindness amid winter's chill. But true nationwide recognition erupted in 1969 when he became a founding cast member of Hee Haw, the syndicated TV phenomenon that fused country music with corny sketches. Grandpa's contributions were iconic. The What's for Supper segment, where he'd rhyme about delectable country feasts, like fried chicken, biscuits, and gravy, or comically disastrous ones, such as thawed TV dinners prompting the cast's chorused yum yum or yuck. His signature exclamation, outrageous, delivered with mock indignation and a sparkle in his eye, punctuated the show's antics. Performing alongside friends like Minnie Pearl, with her price-tagged hat and howdy greetings, and David Stringbean Ackerman, known for his lanky frame and banjo prowess, Grandpa helped preserve rural comedy's warmth. He also shone in the Hee Haw Gospel Quartet, harmonizing on hymns that infuse spirituality into the fun. A charming, lesser-known routine involved him and Ramona singing while ringing handbells and ankle bells, their synchronized chimes adding whimsy to their duets. Beneath the laughter, however, lay profound sorrow that humanized Grandpa beyond his stage persona. On the morning of November 11, 1973, he drove to his neighbor Stringbean's modest cabin in Ridgetop, Tennessee, for a planned hunting outing, a ritual among friends who shared a love for the outdoors. What he encountered shattered him. The lifeless bodies of David Stringbean Aikman, 57, and his wife Estelle, 59, victims of a brutal robbery the night before. The killers, cousins John A. Brown and Marvin Douglas Brown, both 23, had lain in wait, ambushing the couple upon their return from an Opry performance. Stringbean, ever cautious and distrustful of banks due to Depression-era scars, kept his earnings in cash hidden at home, a rumor that drew the thieves. In a desperate struggle, Stringbean fired his pistol, but was fatally shot. Estelle, pleading for mercy, met the same fate. The Browns ransacked the place, but fled with little, leaving behind a scene of horror. Grandpa's discovery sent ripples of fear through Nashville's music community, where stars had felt untouchable. As he recounted in court during the 1974 trial, his voice steady yet laced with grief, he described stumbling upon the bodies, the blood, the disarray, the eerie silence. "I called out, but there was no answer," he testified, his words helping secure life sentences for the perpetrators. John Brown was paroled in 1996 but died soon after. Marvin remains incarcerated. This tragedy, detailed in accounts like Peter Cooper's Tennessean article, marked a turning point, prompting many artists to install security systems and lock doors that once stood open. In his autobiography, Grandpa reflected on the pain, lamenting overlooked figures like Cousin Emmy. It's sad that such people are hardly ever mentioned in books on country music by writers who should know better. This quote reveals his quiet advocacy for the genre's unsung heroes, a frustration born from witnessing talents fade into obscurity. Another emotional layer comes from friend David Holt, who noted Grandpa's wicked sense of humor, often sparked by irritation yet masked a deep sensitivity. Stories from archived interviews, like those in the Country Music Hall of Fame's Ford Theater tribute, paint him as a man who used comedy to cope, sharing anecdotes of early radio mishaps where his grumpiness led to impromptu laughs that lightened heavy hearts. Grandpa's steadfast dedication to tradition occasionally stirred subtle debates within country music's evolving landscape. As the 1960s and 1970s ushered in the glossy Nashville sound, with orchestral strings and pop crossovers dominating, Grandpa remained a sentinel of old-time authenticity. Critics sometimes pondered if his Grandpa character, a youthful performer embodying elderly stereotypes, perpetuated caricatures of rural Southerners as quaint or antiquated, echoing societal tensions around aging, progress, and cultural shifts from the Depression through the post-war boom. During an era when youth culture rebelled and civil rights movements challenged norms, His persona could be seen as reinforcing outdated images, yet Grandpa viewed it as affectionate homage, celebrating the wisdom of elders without mockery. He wasn't rigidly purist. He'd incorporate an electric guitar for modern flair in recordings and shows, blending eras thoughtfully. But his claw-hammer banjo and gospel foundations served as a gentle rebuke to commercialization, reminding the industry to honor its roots. Debates also swirled around hee-haw itself. Did its hayseed humor trivialize country culture, reducing it to punchlines for urban viewers? Grandpa countered this in interviews, calling it accessible fun that bridged gaps, allowing families to laugh together while showcasing genuine talent. His approach highlighted life's contradictions, embracing innovation while safeguarding heritage, a nuance that added psychological depth to his legacy. The enduring impact of Grandpa Jones extends like the echoes of his banjo across generations. By championing clawhammer playing during its near-forgotten phases, he inspired revivals in bluegrass and folk scenes, influencing pickers from Doc Watson to modern artists exploring traditional techniques. His gospel work, spanning Brown's Ferry 4 to the Hee Haw Quartet, sustained sacred harmonies that influenced groups like the Oak Ridge Boys and the Statler Brothers, embedding faith into country's fabric. Culturally, he demystified rural America, portraying it as vibrant and relatable through humor-laced stories that humanized working-class struggles. In a subtle political vein, his art underscored the resilience of everyday folks amid upheavals, from Depression-era displacements to the social divides of the Vietnam War, promoting dignity without overt activism. Today, lessons from his life abound. In an era of curated images and instant stardom, Grandpa teaches the power of authenticity, showing how quirks like grumpiness can forge connections that last. His 1978 induction into the Country Music Hall of Fame and 2023 honor in the American Banjo Museum Hall of Fame affirm his stature, yet his true significance lies in inspiring us to value heritage amid change. Why does he endure? Because in a fleeting world, he proved that genuine spirit warms souls long after the spotlight fades. In closing, reflect on Grandpa as more than a historical figure, a symbol of life's poignant ironies. A young soul in an old man's guise, a jester acquainted with deep grief, a traditionalist navigating modernity. His melodies persist like cherished memories, urging us to embrace the delicate tapestry of existence, the triumphs, the heartaches, the shared meals that bind us. Louis Marshall Jones departed on February 19, 1998, at age 84, following a devastating stroke mere weeks after his last Opry appearance on January 3rd. But his essence lingers, banjo in hand, beckoning us to the eternal jam session. Thank you for joining this remembrance. May your path echo with that timeless country cadence. That's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button, drop us a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss our new content. Thanks for watching.